Welcome to the fifth and final episode in a Legendarium series about Rome's conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. In Part 5, the Cantabrian War, we will talk about how most of the Iberian Peninsula Romanized under their new rulers, with the exception of the Cantabrian North. In the end, it took a 10-year war of conquest before Rome finally imposed its authority upon the northern coast. After the fall of Numantia in 133 BC, Rome controlled most of the peninsula except for the northern coast. The Senate did not aggressively Romanize the peninsula, yet the movement of people and goods did just that. Romans migrated to the silver-producing areas of southern Iberia in great numbers. Veterans of the Roman army often settled in Iberia, usually after toughing out the previous inhabitants. The Iberians most likely to Romanize were those living in the new towns, where they often worked alongside and did business with Romans. Iberia became part of the Mediterranean-wide free trade zone created by Rome. Syrian dates, Italian olives, and Palmyran incense made its way to Iberia. The only unconquered nation within the peninsula were the Cantabrians, a semi-nomadic people who lived in the mountains of the northern coast, and they saw the increasingly wealthy towns of Roman Iberia as a tempting target. As Cantabrian raids grew in number and frequency, the local authorities responded by building garrisons and sending out patrols. For the better part of a century, this solution worked well, at least until the reign of Caesar Augustus, who took power in 27 BC. Augustus came to northern Iberia in person, along with units of his Praetorian Guard, some of whom would later settle in Iberia to force the surrender of the Cantabrians. To Augustus's sorrow, he could not force the Cantabrians to meet him in open battle. He wound up chasing them through the winding paths in the mountains, and the Cantabrians harried the Romans with hit-and-run raids, in which they threw their javelins at their pursuers and then disappeared into the mountains. Whenever the Romans did manage to run down a Cantabrian, they usually killed themselves rather than surrender to their enemy. Much to his sorrow and shame, Augustus failed to end the war. He instead left his right-hand man Agrippa and the consuls Antistius and Firmus in charge of the war effort. In the end, a total of 8 Roman legions would see service in the Cantabrian War. Rome started to make progress by bribing one of the nations, the Astures, to lead them to the hiding places of their former comrades in arms. Some of the Cantabrians asked to surrender. They requested that a Roman legate come to their camp so they could offer him gifts in tribute. Yet when the legates arrived in the Cantabrian camp, they were seized and executed. So Agrippa continued with his slow, crushing campaign, which eventually extended into a naval blockade that cut the northern coast of Iberia off from the sea lanes. In the end, Agrippa pursued the strategy of simply capturing and executing all northern men of military age. All others were forced to leave the mountains and live in the plains. In effect, Agrippa wiped out the Cantabrian culture. He finished the war by 19 BC, and though he had won a victory that eluded Rome for 200 years, Agrippa was not satisfied with his own performance. Indeed, he demoted the first Augusta Legion, which he felt had shown cowardice in the face of the enemy, and refused a triumph through the streets of Rome. Yet Agrippa finally completed the Roman conquest of Iberia, a campaign that lasted for over 200 years. That wraps things up for this Legendarium series. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.